Welcome, and of course, we'll start with the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
We'll go to the share and take a look here. So let's see where we are. Okay. All right. I think, did we finish the first Rashi on Bet, or did we didn't even start it, did we?
Well, we'll see. We did do
No, we did. I remember doing it right now. And we talked about even if it's if she miscarries, she still is impure, right? And we talked about I don't know if we did Kimei Nidat Dvota. I think we did.
We
And
did.
Explanations that Rashi.
Yeah, we did do that Rashi. So I'm looking at the fourth Rashi.
Okay, so let's go to the next. I want to get back, of course, to the Torah Tamima, but before I do that, I want to cover at least a little bit of ground here. All right, so let's just keep going here.
I'm not sure if you did the fourth Rashi or not, but it looks like you did cover its kind of material, but you might have. You might have.
Right. Okay, so we know that she is impure just as if during the period of her menstruation, these 7 days. I was thinking about the question, I believe, Jocelyn, was it you who asked me, or was it someone else about the 7 days, the significance of the 7 days? So I think it's the 7 days. The 7 days represent creation. And I believe that one reason why the Brit, at least mystically, is on the 8th day, is that the Brit definitely comes to indicate immortality. But that has a lot to do with it. So the 7 days are have to do with this world, and then we have the 8th day. So here we go.
Maybe the 7 days are like the world was established in seventh day and then it was completed.
Yes.
So maybe that's also the same with the
right. The first 7 days of the child coming into this world. Yes, I think that's all along the same lines. In other words, when you see the number 7, associated with the 7 days of creation, right? With it being this worldly. Okay.
Shmini, like in our last Parsha.
I know. Also, 7 days of
one beyond that.
That's correct. That's when the connection is made with God.
Olam haba or something. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Olam haba. And by the way, I just realized, of course, for the first time, that here's a connection to that previous Parsha, right? Uvayom Hashmini. And on the 8th day, lots and lots of Torah Tanima. Imo Basar Orlato. The flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. Let's see if we have let's see. Is any, let's see. No Rashi on that I can tell. Ushloshim yom, and 30 days, ushloshet yamim, and 3 days. So another 33 days, and 33 and 7, of course, makes another significant number. Okay, and 33 days, teshev bidmei tohora. She shall remain in the blood of her purification. Believe me, you don't want to think that you understand what you just read. Okay, if you even suspect that you do, it is not what you think. Okay, she shall remain in the blood of her purification. B'chol kodesh lo tiga. So this is the pragmatic outcome of being in a state of impurity. All right, that there's a practical, there's I don't know if we'd say a nafkamina of it. Usually that's a practical difference, but at any rate, B'chol kodesh lo tiga. She shall not touch anything that is kodesh. In other words, that is sanctified. Ve'el hamikdash, and a second element, ve'el hamikdash lo tavor. Nor should she enter the sanctuary. She should not come to the sanctuary ad malot yemei tohora, until the completion of the days of her purification. Okay. We'll go on. I'll go back and do the Rashis, but for the moment, I will just, give me a second here. Sorry. Oh, I just hope it doesn't disappear. Wow. I'm taking my computer in this morning. The in nekeva teled. But if she gives birth, and here's teled, right? If she gives birth to a female.
So, I see. You're going to the next verse.
Yes, I
Okay.
am. My computer is doing funny things. It's not letting me pull this up for some reason. It's not letting me do anything. Let me stop the share a second, see if I can start it again, and it'll help. We'll see. Yeah, okay, so this is letting, I'm going to start the share once again. See if this will work. All right, here we go. If she gives birth to a woman, to a female, the tam'ah shvu'ayim kenidata, then she shall be impure for 2 weeks. Shvu'ayim, 2 weeks, kenidata, according to her menstruation. V'shishim yom v'sheshet yamim, and 66 days teshev, she shall remain al demei Torah, for the blood of her purification. So you notice that it is doubled for
Double 40.
Yes. So it occurred to me, although I have never read this, so I don't have any support for this theory, is that it's because a girl will give birth, that the child she has given birth to, ultimately, we hope, will give birth to another child. And that's why, because she has the biological parts to give birth herself. Okay. And that's why it's doubled. But do not think that these extra days are actually negative. They actually, I believe, aren't really negative, except for the fact that she's not allowed to partake of holy, like if she's a bat kohen or an eshet kohen, she would not be able to eat truma. Okay. Uvimilot yemei Torah, and now we move on. And when the days of her purification are filled, Leven olavat, for a son or a daughter, tavi keves ben shnato leolah, she should bring a yearling lamb as an olah, uven yonah, and a pigeon or tor or a dove, turtle dove, lechatat, as a sin offering. And by the way, just a little parallel, except it's reversed, right? It's interesting that it is reversed. The sin offering doesn't come first. The whole offering comes first, and then the sin offering. But remember, Aaron had to bring a sin offering and an olah. He had to bring, they were different animals, but likewise. So I suspect, just for the first time reading this, realizing there may be a little parallel there. El petach ohel moed. So now she's commanded, right, to approach the entrance of the tent of meeting. El hakohen, she should bring it to the kohen. Vehikrivo lifnei Hashem, and he shall offer it up before Hashem. Vechiper aleha, and atone for her. I am going to spoiler alert. The question, of course, that's immediately asked is, what sin has she committed that she should be forgiven? You don't have, what's it? More recently, you don't need to seek, what's it called when the president gives you a
Pardon?
Yeah, you don't need a pardon if you haven't sinned, right? Okay, so why does the priest have to atone for her? And the answer that I remember from many, many years ago is that when she gave birth, she swore she was never going to go through this again. That at that particular moment, as she was going through her pains of childbirth, she swore she would never do it again. So that's the one explanation. I'm sure there may be better ones, but anyway, I think it was worth sharing with you all.
Very nice.
Maybe
After I gave birth the first time, I said to my husband, we can adopt the rest.
Okay. Well, Shira Beth, hopefully in all your acts of charity, etc., you have brought a whole offering and a sin offering. Yeah,
Could be because of all the swearing that goes on while giving birth. I'm just saying,
I love it.
it's
I
like,
love it.
there could be just for that.
But
You know.
there's something
Okay,
very beautiful, right? Excuse me one second.
Yeah.
I just think there's something also very beautiful in this interpretation and in connecting it to labor pains, and the pain of delivery. I think there's something actually cool about that. Go ahead. I'm
Yes.
sorry, Lisa.
Yes, I agree with you, and that's very cool. And thank you all for the smiles that I just got. But on the serious side, the waiting, it crossed my mind since my mother's mother had very serious negative reactions to birth,
Hmm.
and then had postpartum depression, which was not recognized in those days. But I can see why all this waiting is very important and all the nurturing is so important. My mother was actually taken away. Well, my mother went to her grandmother for 3 years, and my mom's mom went to a mental institution
Yes.
and was treated horribly there.
Hmm.
So this is just bringing all that stuff up for me.
Wow.
And as difficult as it is, and my mother was a Kohen.
Hmm.
So thank you all I'm so glad that even though I wasn't going to show up this morning, this is what really does bring me to this, is for the things that are stimulated in our minds and our hearts and have us have these interactions. Thank you.
So I'm so glad you brought up, we were sort of thinking along the same lines when you mentioned postpartum depression. And I'm wondering to myself whether, I'm not saying, I think they are absolutely, what this tries to make us aware of is the mystical, there's so much here that is not simply rational. But if I were to give any rational basis to it, is I wonder if these particular things have a direct connection to postpartum depression, and to help a woman through it. And you'll see later on, I don't want to give away more right now as to why it might help a woman in postpartum depression, at any rate. So the priest is going to atone for her, the tahara mimkor dameha, and she shall be purified from the makor, the source of her blood. Okay, and dameha, of course, well, damim is plural. Zot Torat Hayoledet, this is the instruction regarding the woman in childbirth, lezachar o lenekeva, whether it be a male or a female. And that is the end of that. But no, sorry. We've got a little tag on this. The imlo timsa yada dese. But if, literally it means if her hand does not find enough for a lamb, for a sheep. In other words, if she cannot afford a sheep, which I love about this, right? Velakha shte torim, she shall then take 2 pigeons, or shnei bnei yona, or 2 turtle doves, echad leolah, 1 for an olah, echad lechatat, and 1 for a sin offering, v'chiper aleha kohen the Torah, and the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be pure. And I love, this is not the only example of the Torah clearly wanting us to do this. And there's this, again, the moment you go into circumstances alter cases, we're moving into oral Torah, right? Because those of you who know me know that for me, the written Torah, the subtext is doing what doesn't come naturally, and the subtext of the oral Torah is circumstances alter cases. And this is an example of a circumstance altering a case. And which goes to show you just how powerfully connected the notion of oral Torah is with written Torah, even though here it's part of the written Torah. That's where it ends, I believe. Just make sure. Yeah. And now we start the whole issue of Tzora'at here, which we are not going to do. And there's a good chance we will not do it this year. Hopefully give me enough time to do some preparation. Tons of stuff. Look at this. All right, so I want to finish up the Rashis. Let's see where we are on that. I think we're on Daled, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That was the whole Parsha of Tazri'ah?
No. That's
It
no.
was the end of the chapter, though,
It's
or the Aliyah
it's the part that deals that
chapter.
gives the name to the thing, but actually Tazri'ah deals a ton with tzarat, deals with
Oh,
the diagnosis of when you know how does the priest need to diagnose as a case of tzarat. Goes into that.
It was the end of a chapter.
It's just the end of a subject. We're end of a little
Ugh.
Teshev, she shall remain. So this is that sentence that says that she shall, for 33 days, she shall remain bidmei Torah, in the blood of her purification. Teshev. So literally it means she will dwell, right? Ein teshev, this word teshev, ela lashon akava. It is, or akeva, I think akava is correct. So when this word teshev has the connotation of delay, waiting. Kamo, and he gives two examples in the Dvarim, Deuteronomy 1, V'teshvu b'kodesh, Kadesh, I'm sorry, and you dwelt in Kadesh. But the point is, this happened after the incident, I believe, of the 12 spies, and they had to then remain there. They could not proceed. So again, they were delayed. They were held up. And then in Bereshit Yud Gimel, Genesis 13, Vayeshev be'elonei Mamre. This is, of course, referring to Abraham. Literally, it means he dwelt in the terebinths of Mamre, or the plains of Mamre, however you want to translate Elonei. But the point is that Abraham, as you know, was wandering around. He lived a nomadic life. So the implication is that he held up his nomadic journeys in the Elonei Mamre. Gives you an additional meaning to the issue of why it says specifically he was at Elonei Mamre. There was a reason for him to remain there. Bidmei Torah. Here we go. The blood of her purification. And here's the thing. Af al pi shira'ah Torah. Despite the fact that she may see blood from her private part, she remains pure. Okay, not pure for the sense of her going to the mikdash, but pure to be close to her husband. Because normally, as you know, during menstruation, a woman and her husband are separated. They're not supposed to touch each other. If they eat together, there's supposed to be some kind of barrier, some kind of indication of a separation. And by the way, you know the greatest aphrodisiac? Denial.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a rabbi who says that God wanted to bless the relationships of husbands and wives. And that's why he forced them to separate for, well, it's more than 7 days, it turns out to be, but regardless, but that he forced a period of physical separation between the two because he wanted their lust for each other to remain fresh.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I know. It's so many people don't get that. They would not understand that. Okay. So here's the point: is that despite the fact that she may be bleeding in her private area, she's still allowed to be close to her husband, which is the reason why I said I wonder if this has something to do with postpartum depression. Okay. So Mashi makes some grammatical comments here. So we notice that here it says bidmei tohora, and you have to look very carefully. You have to be a detective here with your magnifying glass. So instead of telling you the answer, I'm going to show you these two words that occur in the sentence. And thanks, Lauren, I see what you got. Keep it out. Okay. Bidmei Torah. What do you notice? There's a difference between this word and this word. What's the difference? I'm going to see if I can get them up on the same screen. It doesn't look like it. Well, I could this way. Nope, not going to be able to do it. Here's the one word, and here is the other word. What's the difference?
Yeah,
If you
Where are
read
the
the
two
Rashi,
words?
you'll
Because
see.
I can look in my text. One has a dot in the
Yeah,
hay.
the dot in the
That is
hay.
correct. A dot in the hay. A dot, this little dot
Yeah.
in the hay. And this doesn't have the dot in the hay. This little dot in the hay is called a mapik, a mapik. That's the name of this dot.
It's a
And
needle in a haystack.
there we go. And that little dot indicates a possessive form. It means her. Okay, let me see. Okay. Give me a moment. I'm getting a phone call, and I don't know why. Okay, give me a second. Okay, 1 second. Hello. Can I help you?
Yes, hi, Rabbi.
Mine's different. I have the dot at the end of 4, and then no dots at the ends of the of later ones.
Yes, the dot is at the end of 4.
Not in his. Oh, he's got it there, and then it's, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, because it's twice in that same sentence.
Okay, let's.
Is it twice in the same sentence? Yes, it is.
The
It's twice
dot's
in the
only
same
once.
sentence.
The word
Right,
is
the
twice.
dot's only once, and then wherever we see that one again, it's without the dot. So that's the only place we see that dot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The point is that one case there's no dot, and we know generally speaking, a kamatz hey at the end of a word indicates feminine noun, but
Mhm.
a makpik in the hey indicates possessive case, her something. So that's how you show her in the possessive as a possessive suffix. Okay,
Mhm.
or with a va is his, with a hey is a mapik hey is her something. Okay, so in this case it's her tohar, and in this case it means it is simply a noun, a feminine noun, and Rashi wants us to realize that. Okay, so bidmei tohara. This doesn't mean the blood of her purification. And by the way, notice how here it's Yemei Torah. Okay, very close, but not the same. So anyway,
And the next Rashi says the same thing, but for a different part.
all right, okay. Bidmei Torah lo mapik hey. That is, there's no mapik in the hey. Vahu shem davar. And that means it is simply a noun. And you notice purification. It's a noun. Kamo, such as tohar, right? Purity. Yemei tohora mapike, the days of her purification, right? Mapike, this is with a mapik. Yemei tohar shelah. It is the days of her purification. So just to be able to translate and how a little dot can make a difference. Okay. Onwards. Bechol Kodesh, here we go. Sorry. Lo tiga, she shall not touch. Azhara, this is literally Ahazara is like a warning, but Azara means like a negative commandment, right? Thou shalt not. Ochel, to one who is to eat anything. She shouldn't consume, as I mentioned, for example, if she's a bat kohen and or she's a wife of a kohen, she is not allowed to eat truma during this time. Kamo shishnuya b'yevamot, as is taught in the tractate Yevamot on page 75. The Chol Kodesh, and now we go to a different category, which she is warned against, etc. And this is in Makot Yudalid and Yevamot in the same place on this page. The Rabot, this is to include et ha-truma. So this specifically is to come to include truma. And the reason is, so for example, while a priest would eat, let's say, a sin offering, I don't believe non-priests, whether, a female daughter of a priest would be allowed to eat from like a sin offering or something like that. So it's saying she's not allowed to touch that, but this is to include truma, right? The fi sheze. Oh, okay. He explained something else. So you should know that truma is part of produce. Okay, it's not. We're not talking about animals here. We're talking about certain species of produce where the Israelite who has harvested the produce has to take 1/50th. That's the approximate. It's anywhere from 1/40th to 1/60th. The rabbis were the ones who set these percentages, but the average was one. So in other words, 2% had to go to the priest. And this was considered, he had to separate the farmer, the non-priest farmer, had to separate 2% of his harvested and when it was ready to take to market. It wasn't simply harvesting. Obviously, there are all kinds of laws regarding to this, and it's like a tax. So once he had harvested his grain and smoothed out the pile and got it ready to take to market, and he had brought it into his barn, or it was right by where he was ready to now take it to market, he had to take off 2%, and that became truma. Right? It could be olive oil, it could be something, or wine, something like that. And that went to the priest, and it had what is particularly notable is, or noteworthy, is that it had a level of sanctity to it. Okay, so if you had a friend who was a priest and you were not a priest, and he wanted to invite you over for dinner, he couldn't give you truma to eat. Only priests were allowed to eat truma, and they had to be in a state of purity themselves. Okay, and we're going to get into that in a moment, because there might be circumstances where the priest was not pure and therefore could not eat from truma, or the truma itself had become impure for some reason or another. These are all detailed out as to what the reasons might be. But in order to explain this to you, I'm going to have to do this. So the issue where a priest might not be able to eat truma, even though, remember, if it's on a lower level of sanctity, it allows for higher levels of impurity. There are also levels of impurity. And if a priest were at a certain level of impurity, he could not eat from the truma, and had to go through a process of purification in order to be able to eat that truma again. So, for example, if a priest had a nocturnal emission, he would not be allowed to eat truma. And what he would have to do is he would have to go to the mikveh in the morning and wait until nightfall. And he's known that situation where you're along the way, if you're in the process of becoming purified, and you've gone to the mikveh, but you haven't waited until nightfall yet. You are considered a tibul yom. That means a immersion for a day, during the day. And you're not, and what's interesting is that in a case of a priest, this is actually the very first tractate of Brachot, the very first Mishnah of Brachot deals with this particular issue. A priest was allowed to eat truma, even though he wasn't completely purified. So this includes truma, the fi shezo tibolet yom aroch. So there are degrees of tibul yom. And this is a tibulit. She is a tibul yom aroch, a long day. Why a long day? Because in the process of her purification, she has to go to the mikveh, quite probably, although we didn't read that here. And she has to still bring a sacrifice. Bringing that sacrifice completes her purification process. And that's why this is a long tibul yom. Shetavla, the Sof Shiva. So Rashi tells us she went to the mikveh at the end of 7 days. So that's this first 7 days. She went to the mikveh at the end of those first 7 days. The Ein Shimsha Ma'ariv the Torah, okay? And her sun does not set to allow her to become pure ad shkiyat hachama, until the sun sets, shel yom arba'im, until the 40th day, until the sun sets on the 40th day. Shelamachar, because at the end of those 40 days, Tavi, she brings et kaparat torata. She brings the atonement of her purification process. So between her going to the mikveh after that first 7 days, and then during those next 33 days, she is considered to still be a tibul yom. And for that reason, the Torah has to tell us that she cannot eat truma. Notice, of course, it didn't say she can't eat truma. We needed the interpretation of our tradition to inform us of this kind of stuff. And this is Rashi. Rashi's letting us know. And of course, the actual discussion in the Talmud, where this stuff is actually discussed, is complicated, and which is one reason why we've got all this stuff here. Look at this, all this here on these particular discussions, where Torah Tamima is trying to help us, explore further some of the things that Rashi has just told us. It's as if Rashi is the Reader's Digest of the Torah in terms of commentary, and we have to stop right here. I have abused my time. So I'm going to stop the share, and I'm going to
Hey,
stop.
Leanne.